Hello, Education 2360 students. I hope everyone's having a great day. So this video here is to walk you through the rest of the parts of our fieldwork assignment. So before I jump into the rest of the parts, I wanted to kind of go over the fieldwork timeline and checklist, as well as answer some questions that I've had some students reach out to me and ask. So first off, this fieldwork assignment requires you to secure your own placement. So if you are in our class and underneath the table of contents, you're going to see a section that is called Fieldwork, Inclusive Practices Fieldwork. That is where all the information is listed. This is where you'll find the checklist as well as the actual assignment itself. So I wanted to start with the checklist and kind of go over a few things that I've had questions about. Students are responsible to secure their own placement. You will complete 12 hours in an early childhood setting. Now, the reason that you have to secure your own placement is because this is a Tennessee campus. I am located at Walter State Community College. There are students that are all across different TBR institutions taking this course. So that is why you have to make sure you have your own placement. Now, you cannot complete your 12 hours and be placed, or your placement, excuse me, cannot be approved unless you complete the placement steps. So you are required to complete a TBI background check at your own expense. You are also required to purchase liability insurance. And this is the questions that I'm getting in my email box, is saying in my inbox saying, well, I'm at a school or at the placement where I'm going to be, they don't have to have liability insurance. It does not matter. I have spoken with the early childhood coordinator here at my home institution. Um, and this question came up last year. They decided that students still will have to purchase liability insurance. It does, number one, does not cost that much. And number two, it is going to protect you in the classroom. So you do have to have it. Now, as far as how you can get it, I know every institution is different, but here at Walter State Community College, we offer insurance and it's available to students to purchase who are education students. So they're able to get it. Another option, if your institution does not provide that for you, is to purchase an NEAYC membership. An NEAYC membership oftentimes has liability coverage for teachers in the classroom. So that's something for you to look into as well. Now, if you are unsure about a background check or purchasing liability insurance and you've never done this, I would encourage you to reach out to your early childhood coordinator at your home institution. They would be very helpful in helping you secure a placement. Now, after you get your background check and you purchase liability insurance, the last step that you will have to do is let me know that you have liability insurance and that you've got your background check. Then I'm going to send you what we call a referral confirmation form. So this placement referral confirmation form is just stating that you've got your background check, you've got liability insurance, and that the school or the early childhood setting where you're at agrees for you to complete your 12 hours, and they're signing off that you will be at their institution or their setting. Once I get that, you will be able to get the green light from me and begin your 12 hours. Now, additional requirements is you will be completing the fieldwork assignment that goes along with your placement. It will be including conducting a classroom observation using the Quality Inclusive Practices Checklist, or the QIPC. You will be completing a teacher interview focused on inclusive practices. You will be submitting a written reflection and analysis of those practices. And then lastly, you will be completing an advocacy letter component. Okay, so all of these items must be completed before up here before you can begin your placement. Okay, so before you get the green light, you got to have your background check, you got to purchase liability insurance, and I got to have that placement confirmation form. I will send you the placement confirmation form once I have knowledge that you've purchased your liability insurance and that you've got your background check completed. Okay. That is the things that I need before I'm going to send you that placement confirmation form. That's why it's not in the course, because I wanted to make sure you completed steps 1 and 2 first. Now, let's go ahead and get into the assignment. So if you go to this table of contents in that same module section, you're going to see the actual assignment. Okay, it's above the checklist. So you're going to click on it. Now, the last video, I went over the overview, parts 1 and 2, and a little bit of part 3. We're going to begin again at part 3 and then go through parts 4 and 5 as well. Okay, so remember, part 1 was where you're going to do a preparation summary. You're going to prepare, summarize. Then the second part is where you were going to complete an observation using the QIPC checklist, and then you were also going to be interviewing your teacher. Your checklist, right, in the interview is helping you guide data collection, and you had to complete those parts before you can get down to part 3. Now, after you did your preparation summary, you completed your observation, you interviewed the teacher, now it's time for you to analyze and summarize your practice, okay? So this section really is going to help you use your evidence that you collected in part 2, um, using the QIPC framework, and you're going to use it to identify strengths and challenges in 3 areas: access, participation, and supports. You're going to use concrete examples to support your analysis, and you're going to get that from your observation and interview. Now, this is a form. This is the part 3 that you're going to fill out. Okay, again, those are those 3 areas: access, participation, supports. In each one of those areas or those key features, you're going to identify the strengths and challenges that you've noticed. Again, you're going to get this from the observation QIPC checklist as well as your notes from your interview with the teacher. Now, the next part, part 4, is where you're going to take all this information and you're going to use your teaching strategies. You're going to reflect on that. You're going to reflect on your intentional practice and advocacy identity. Okay, so how I want you to do this part 4 is you're going to label it into 3 sections. 1, inclusive and responsive teaching strategies. 2, reflective and intentional practice. And 3, professional identity and advocacy. Now, each section I went ahead and put exactly what I wanted you to write about. I gave you some examples and considerations and strategies. So number 1 is section 1, which is inclusive and responsive teaching strategies. I gave you some strategies to consider. Remember, you may not be seeing all of these strategies, or you may have, but when you're talking about and answering these 3 questions in section 1, I want you to use evidence from your observation, from the teacher interview, and your QIPC checklist, right? And these are some just examples of strategies. When you're writing this part 4, I want you to use narrative form, right? You're going to focus on evidence-based analysis rather than just generalized statements. So just keep that in mind when you're writing. Now in section 2, you're going to reflect on your intentional practice. This just means look at your own teaching practice, right? Your own experience that has influenced you in your teaching practices. Look at your own look at your own practices and look at your strengths and your areas for growth. Okay, and you're going to talk about that. And remember, when you're using your own reflection thoughts, the thoughts have to be intentional, meaning yet what insights did you gain from the QIPC checklist evidence and observation and interview and how they shaped your thinking. And then lastly, 3 is where you're going to start to identify your uh, professionally and look at advocacy, and you're going to answer these questions, right? Again, use supporting evidence with your ideas from what you learned in your observation and interview. Okay, so part 5 is going to be writing an advocacy letter to a legislator. So this could be a local, state, or national legislator. I will let you decide. But what your letter is going to do, it's going to help you be able to apply the knowledge that you've had in this assignment and experience to practice what it means to be an advocate in a manner that's effective, respectful, and professional. Okay, so I give you some guidelines and examples here. So whenever you're doing your letter, the first thing would be to introduce yourself, right? Explain your role as an early childhood educator or your experience. You're going to explain to them why inclusive practices matter in early childhood, specifically for the young children you work with and families. Now, remember, when you're talking about explaining inclusive practices, use your observation and teacher interview evidence to support your argument, right? The real impact it has on children's access, participation, and learning. And then also identify a policy or program change that you want the legislator to support for you. So here are some examples when we talk about policy or program change. Some areas include like increased funding for inclusive practices resources in the classroom, professional development for teachers on inclusive strategies, and even hiring or supporting inclusion specialist. Okay. When you are writing the letter, keep in mind you need to use a professional, respectful, and persuasive tone, right? Because you're going to persuade them to be on your side and kind of support you, your policy or program change. Now, I did give you an advocacy letter handout that has sentence starters and examples. These are the parts of the letter that you should that these are parts of the letter that I want to see when I'm reading. So you have your opening of the letter, you're introducing the issue, you're presenting evidence from what you've seen in your observation and interview with the teacher. You are making a clear ask, so looking at that policy change um, or whatever it is that you are looking at with program change, either one, and then you will close the letter out. And then lastly, you have your rubric. Now, keep in mind the rubric is quite long, but again, this is a key assessment with NAEYC accreditation. So we had to make sure that we aligned each part with also the standards of NAEYC. So you're going to see that that's how we broke it down by standard, key, and competency. Okay, the standards are at the very beginning of the assignment. Now, your levels of achievement of how you're going to be scored is by did not submit that section, you're below expectations, you're progressing toward expectations, or you meet expectations. And you'll see that it's going to be the same levels of achievement for each part and standard connected to that part of the assignment. Okay. I suggest students read over this more than one time. Number one, because it's quite long, but number two, keep it like a checklist to make sure that you're meeting each part and um, each part of the assignment and the standard that goes along with it. I know this is a lot. One more thing that I want to remind you about is again, this fieldwork assignment is part of your 12 hours in the early childhood setting. If you are unwilling to complete this assignment, if you are unwilling to do your 12 hours or purchase liability insurance or get your background check, then you need to drop this course because this is required to be able to pass this course. If you have any concerns or questions, always feel free to reach out. I'm here to support you. Also, lean on your early childhood coordinator at your institution because they're going to help you with securing your placement. All right. I look forward to seeing everyone's growth and your progress throughout this assignment. Until next time, take care.